what is going on? It is 12 noon on Friday, which means it's time for this week's episode of State of Real Estate, where today we're talking about a topic that it's important to know about from an investment standpoint. Real estate, it's not the biggest fear with it, but there's another market, the stock market, where volatility is a huge topic right now. And you might be wondering, maybe you're wondering, what is volatility? We're going to talk about that. Maybe you're wondering what creates volatility. We'll touch on that. And maybe you're also wondering how real estate is impacted by volatility. How volatile is real estate? Can some of the things you see happen in the stock market happen to real estate as well? We're going to answer those questions and more. We're talking about volatility today. Stick with us. I'm John Chrismo. You're watching State of Real Estate.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Chrismo. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. And what we're talking about today is volatility. So what is volatility? First and foremost, volatility is where you see the best example of where you could find volatility is probably in the stock market, where you could see that prices might go up, down, and it might do crazy stuff like that all day long. That's not what you see in real estate. If you go in, let's say, Robinhood, it's not going to look anything like Zillow. You do see little charts on Zillow, but I mean, when you see charts on a website like Zillow or anything like that talking about home values, they look more like this. Maybe little jumps and things like that, but overall pretty steady. When we talk about volatility, we might see something like this and this, and then this and this, and a lot more of ups and downs. That would be the red would show something that's highly volatile, something that moves quickly, whereas the black is lower volatility, where there's less movement, where there's less sudden swings. So really volatility, you could think of it like velocity. That's another word that's going to sound very similar. And it's really your velocity of change. That's really what volatility is. Volatility is the velocity of change. How quickly can something change? So again, when we talk about the stock market, we talk about like all these frenzy stocks that are out there, cryptocurrencies, things like that. The velocity of change is very high. And we're going to talk about why. So that's what volatility is. It's basically how quickly a price can move. So real estate, generally the prices don't move that fast, or at least a lot slower when compared to something like the stock market, something that would have much more volatility to it. So again, it's the velocity of change, how quickly something changes, swings one way or another. Now, what creates that? What creates volatility? So let's talk a little about supply and demand. Do another little chart here. Talk about supply and demand. You might remember charts that look maybe something like this. And the less you have of something, the more expensive it's going to be. The more you have of something, the less expensive it's going to be. So that's one of the factors that drives the factors, really, if you count supply and demand as two separate things. But one of the factors that drives volatility. Now, how does that drive volatility? So when the supply and demand get out of sync with each other, and that was the farther ends of that chart that I just erased, which probably shouldn't erase that quite yet. But when there's a great disparity between how little supply there is and how high the demand is, that's going to drive price up. And it's going to do it quicker. It's going to do it faster. There's going to be a great velocity of change. That change is going to happen very quickly. Now, with real estate, let's think about real estate. How does supply and demand change for real estate? How quickly real estate does change, and there is still some level of volatility. It's a very low level of volatility in real estate, but the busier your market is, the faster your prices are changing. Some markets, prices will change faster than others. You know, if we look back into the previous housing crisis where there's all the mortgage fraud going on and then all the mortgage fraud came tumbling down, that there's a lot of volatility with the pricing. And that's because there was a lot of, one of the factors, I should say, not because, but one of the factors that caused such a great velocity of change was there was a lot of supply of real estate. Now, why was there a lot of supply of real estate? There's a lot of supply of real estate because mortgage fraud was generally accepted during that time. And through mortgage fraud, there's no limit to how many houses you could buy. If they'll approve your fraudulent mortgage loan, who's going to stop you from getting a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth? And that's what a lot of people were doing. That was a lot of the fraud that drove a big part of that whole mortgage crisis. There's a lot of things that happened. But that little aspect of supply and demand, of all of a sudden having all these houses that people bought second, third, fourth, fifth homes, but all of a sudden they couldn't afford them and they really didn't need them, so all of a sudden there was all of these properties available on the market for sale, so that flooded the supply. That created an immense amount of supply, but now people were spooked, people were scared, people didn't want to invest in real estate, didn't want to buy a home because they were worried that prices might keep dropping. So when you have skyrocketing supply and plummeting demand, that's going to cause the price to fall out. And that's what happened. That was an example of volatility, but that's not normal at all in real estate. And even the volatility that occurred with housing, this wasn't a one-day type of thing. You know, there's historical dates on the stock market where there's been massive, just billions of dollars erased in hours. It doesn't happen quite that quickly with real estate. Now, there can still be these swings and these changes. And again, supply and demand is one of the major factors driving that. And that's really what I want to dive deeper into as well. These are really fundamental topics. I mean, today we're not really talking about anything too technical like some of our other shows normally are. But this is a concept that from an investment standpoint, you want to understand. And however it is that you invest, if you don't invest at all, you should probably invest some way, somehow. Whether at the very least start investing in yourself. If you're not invested in anything yet, first invest in yourself. But then figure out something else you could invest in, because there's nothing better than your money working for you. You know, it's great when you work, but then it's even better when on top of your work, you've got your money working for you, making more money. So understanding supply and demand is going to help you better understand how to invest in yourself, how to invest in your business, to build your business bigger, to better serve your clients and have your business be better adapted and prepared for the market. You want to invest through real estate or invest in stocks or invest in cryptocurrency or however it is that you're diversifying your investments, they all require a basic understanding of supply and demand. So let's frame this around real estate. What is it that drives the demand of real estate? What is it that makes people want to move somewhere? Well, a few different factors. Let's deal Florida specifically. One of the big things in Florida, I'm going to use a term from the course that you're probably going to say, like, well, what does that mean? So situs, that term situs means they have a preference for a certain area. There's tons of people that have a preference for Florida simply because of the weather. Or maybe that preference is because of job opportunities. Maybe that preference is because of friends and family living there. And you can see how some of these topics might be more trendy than others. The weather's pretty much the same in Florida. Yes, sometimes the year it's a little bit hotter than others, but overall it's fairly predictable. We kind of know what you're getting into weather-wise. So it's not like all of a sudden like, whoa, did you just hear that Florida is all of a sudden a tropical paradise? No, that's always been that way. So that's not something that's going to really change for the most part. We talk about friends and family. That also might not be another trend type of thing, because that's, unless you have mass migrations, which you kind of, if you look at, there's actually some pretty cool maps you could look at online where you could actually see the inflow and outflow of people moving in and out of different states. So that's really interesting because there's a lot of people that are uprooting themselves because of a lot of changes in the world and the economy and in regulations and rules that you may or may not want to have to follow, that may or may not be enforced in other jurisdictions. You can fill in the blanks with whatever that might mean to you or your clients that you're thinking about when you're filling out this, that I'm trying to understand supply and demand here. But that maybe does turn into a little bit more of a trend for it. That could be something. The job opportunities, that also could be something that's a trend. If jobs are coming to an area, that's going to trend the demand up. Why? Because people need jobs. People will move to places that have good jobs. They have more jobs. More jobs creates a more competitive marketplace. The more jobs that you create, the more people that are going to come to the area looking for work. The more people that come to the area looking for the work, the more competitive it's going to be. And when it's more competitive, there's going to be more opportunity, and it's going to feed into itself back and forth. Now, there's ultimately pros and cons on both sides of this here, but generally speaking, when there's more jobs added to an area, that's going to increase the demand. Now, remember, real estate has a much lower volatility than, again, say, stocks. If there's a news article that comes out about stocks, that's probably already too late to capitalize on that because there's already people trading in nanoseconds. In real estate, things happen a lot slower. The velocity is a lot lower. It takes a lot longer to transfer property, transfer real property, real estate, than it does to buy and sell stocks. So let's put some of these specific things up here. So preferences for jobs I want to put up here because that's definitely a big one. Whenever you see there's jobs coming to, or this is also important as well, when you see jobs leaving an area, when jobs are leaving an area, that's going to cause property values to decrease over the long term. If there's less jobs or wages basically go down, that is going to drag down prices. Not right away, but eventually that's going to be coming. And again, the more you understand this, the more you kind of see what's coming. And because real estate moves like a turtle, that's a great example. The tortoise and the hare. The rabbit, that's your volatile stocks, like the stock market. The things that can move very quickly and change very fast. Real estate is more like a turtle. Now that turtle is going to go down the hill, but not as fast as a rabbit would go down a hill. Same thing for going up the hill. Same thing for just crawling along. Real estate is more of the turtle when it comes to volatility. So when you see these things that drive supply and demand, the question is, can you be faster than the turtle? When you're competing in higher volatility markets, such as the stock market, you're competing with rabbits versus turtles. Now the turtles are bigger, they're heavier, they're harder to move, but they get momentum, and when they get momentum, they keep going. And these are the things that are steering those turtles one direction or another. So jobs, that's really one of the biggest things, is the opportunities there, and this is one of the things that might change more rapidly. Other things that might be a preference, especially if somebody has children that they would want to go to school, they would probably want something in an area that's a good school district. And even if they don't have kids, they'd probably still want that. Why? Because there's higher property values in neighborhoods with good school districts. Why are the property values higher? Because people will pay more for a property in a good school district. Why? Well, because people with kids want their kids to be in those good school districts. And even if you don't have kids, you could still reap the benefits of being in that good school district, because that's going to cause the appreciation from the market, as long as that desirability, that preference, that situs is maintained. Now, if that situs changes, so again, maybe if the school district was the driving factor, well, if all of a sudden that school starts to not be as great as it used to be, that's going to have ripple effects as well. When you see businesses closing, if you look at towns that, sadly are dying towns and cities, and you look around and you see the things that are happening and all the ripple effects that lead into each other, businesses closing, well, that's a loss of jobs. And now when there's loss of jobs, there's losses of income. And now the people that do have houses, this is now when we maybe could talk a little about the supply side. So maybe somebody loses their job, and now it comes the question of, okay, well, how do I pay my mortgage? Well, if they can't pay their mortgage and they get foreclosed on, that's going to increase the supply of real estate. So the things that are affecting the supply are going to be builders. Builders who are literally creating the supply, creating the real estate into existence. Who else affects supply? Well, that's going to be willingness to sell, people's willingness to sell, or I should say desire to sell. So if people increase, if there's collectively some higher desire to sell, which there's something called panic selling, and you look in more volatile markets, it's a lot more common, because usually people aren't just going to go sell their house the moment the market takes a little dip. But if property values are going down and down and down and down, that's going to increase people's desire to sell. Why? Well, they want to cut their losses maybe before they're in a situation where they owe more money than what their property is worth. I ultimately wouldn't recommend that, because historically, real estate always has rebounded. Always. Every recession, every depression that's ever occurred in real estate, it's always rebounded past that. Even the last recession, there's very few properties out there that still have not rebounded past the values they were at then. It takes time, because again, real estate is the turtle. And every now and then that turtle might get picked up. That's what happened in that whole thing leading up to the last housing crash. Again, the mortgage fraud was a huge driving factor behind that, and that was literally people picking up the turtle and moving the turtle faster. And then regulations came in and said, okay, we can't do that mortgage fraud anymore, because obviously that's bad. So they picked the turtle up and moved the turtle out of harm's way, which caused further decreases in value until it eventually did rebound. But that being said, not everybody knows that. Not everybody thinks that way. Not everybody is in a position where they can wait it out. So that desire to sell, when you see swings in prices, that typically can increase, and that could increase the supply. And if you already have an oversupply, and that's why, at least in the Tampa Bay area, I know for sure, but generally throughout the rest of the country, builders learn their lesson after that. Because a lot of the builders that are in business today were in business during that time. There were a lot of builders that went out of business, but the ones that were able to maintain and stay in were the ones that didn't overbuild, or if they did, they're able to adapt their business and they don't overbuild now like they used to. That oversupply of housing that was already existing, that was one of the factors that caused the Tampa Bay market to be hit harder than a lot of the other markets in the country. So that's something to look out for. How many houses are available? How much are the home builders building? Are the homes that they're building actually being purchased? Is there anything over here on this demand side that would trigger people to want to buy homes? Because if you look back in history and you look what was going on, there was a lot of home sales going on in Tampa, but it wasn't because of jobs being created. It wasn't because of more people moving to the area, although there were, but not as many as the homes that they were building and that were being sold. Because again, a lot of people were doubling and tripling up on the amount of properties that is owned because they wanted a good investment. They saw it as a good investment, so they invested. And because of lack of verification, a lot of people took advantage of it, And when enough people took advantage of it and the bottom fell out, that caused the ripple effect when that desire to sell increased. So right now, as far as I see it, the inventories are a lot significantly lower with builders, and they build a lot slower than they used to, and they're a lot smarter. Information moves much faster now, and the faster information moves, the easier it is to get ahead of the velocity of change, to get ahead of the volatility. You taking in this information, especially in real estate, this is going to help you get ahead of the curve. You know, we could talk about the demand, and if we're talking more long-term, the, again, less volatile, the slower moving factors, one of those is going to be household composition. That's a major factor that drives demand, because what happens when people have a child? Well, if they only had one bedroom and they now have a child, they probably want a second bedroom. If not now, eventually they're going to want that second bedroom. And even if they can't afford the second bedroom, they're still going to want that second bedroom or third bedroom or fourth bedroom or whatever that is as their household composition increases in size. And it might not be them having kids, maybe, and this is another trend that you see happening, and this is why it's important to pay attention to some of these things, so again, you could be informed about any decisions you make as well as how you can advise your clients. But one of the composition changes you're seeing now are parents moving in with their children. Parents moving in with their children rather than the parents having more children for a variety of different factors. Why? Well, you know, maybe not everybody wants to put people in a nursing home. Maybe they'd rather have their parents living with them, or maybe living close by, or in an in-law suite, or something like that. But that household composition of, okay, what does your household look like? There's a lot of changes going on. If we look at the reproduction rate, you could see trends going on with that. When you look at, again, the trends of parents moving in with their kids living at home for longer, that's changes in household composition. And builders will adapt because they'll change the style of homes they're building. There's now, I think it was Lennar Homes or one of these home builders, I just saw something the other day of them advertising, making a push for basically a dual household type of property. And whether you're using that for a family member or maybe the demand for that is, again, what does that household look like? Because one of the ways a lot of people like to hack into getting into investing, because a lot of people want to get into real estate investing, but they don't know how, or they don't have the ability to just go out and buy an investment property, so they have to hack into it. And how do they do that? How do they house hack, as they call it? Well, they go buy a duplex and they live in one of the units, and then they go rent out the other unit. Well, now nationwide home builders are now building duplex style properties where there's a main quarters and kind of a smaller apartment type of property, which might be for a child that is living at home when they're maybe going to college or something like that. Or maybe their parents moving in to live with them. Or maybe some other family member that is maybe coming to live, or maybe they're just renting it out to make extra money to, again, start to get into real estate investing. Those changes in household composition, the changes in what people want and demand, is going to affect prices. The less you have of supply and the more you have of demand, the more prices go up. So the more people want something, the higher prices will go. The less you have of it, the higher the prices will go. The more you have of it will cause prices to drop. The less people want it will cause people to drop. Cause the price to drop, not people to drop. Cause the less people that want it will cause the price to drop. And the faster this happens, the faster these changes can occur, and the faster that these assets are allowed to change hands, are able to change hands. Look, you can't go in the Zillow app and go find a house you like and say, okay, I'm going to buy this house at $333,000 and I'm going to set it in here to sell it at $345,000. Let's see if that happens today. No, that doesn't exist for real estate, although that'd be cool if something like that happened. But here's the issue behind that, is again the velocity of things in real estate. Because you can't just trade real estate in a day, typically. This is usually at least a 10-day, if not a month-long process. At the minimums we're talking about here. So that time that it takes to get this done causes the velocity to be slower. It gives people time to think about things before they make a decision. Because they have to. because they have to sit there and basically sit on their hands while they wait for the pieces to fall into place when you're purchasing assets that have a low volatility, that do not have a high velocity of change, where the price changes happen but over a longer period of time compared to a more volatile type of asset, like a stock. So one other thing I did want to touch on too is when real estate does get volatile, what does that look like? Well, for the most part, that's what it looks like right now, which it's still not that volatile, but there is a greater velocity. It is possible to list your property. I was just hearing a story from one of my agents the other day of a property that was listed, and within a few hours, there was 33 offers on the property. Property went on the market within a few hours, 33 offers. That's speed. Now, that property isn't going to be closed and transferred today, but that's a lot faster than real estate typically occurs. And when you see the higher velocity, that's where there's more volatility. There can be greater changes in pricing. And what's happening now when there are 33 offers? Well, what does 33 offers do? That drives pricing up. Now, does that mean it's going to all come crashing down? Not necessarily. Because what you've got to look at are what are the reasons that are driving that increase. Is it people getting better jobs, getting paid more? Look, in Florida, Tampa specifically, there's been a lot of jobs being announced over the years, especially with new developments that are occurring in the Tampa Bay area. There's a lot of office space being developed. There's a lot of educational institutions being built here. So there's a lot of opportunities that are being created in the Tampa Bay area. And on top of that, Florida in general, if we talk about jobs, now there's just recently in the last election that it passed the amendment to increase the minimum wage in Florida to $15. Now, regardless of how you feel about that was voted in, and that it looks like it's going forward as planned unless something changes. So let's just assume it does. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. It's over the next however many years. There's arguments that could go one way or the other. Now, with jobs being created constantly, that's more of an argument for the good, the better, the brighter future, regardless of more restrictive government regulations. Again, the regulation of what the minimum wage is for that. Now, that could also cause harm to businesses if they can't afford that. That could cause them to have to lay off people so they can afford to keep employees. So that could go either way. So that's definitely something to look out for. But again, the more it is that you start to collect the data and the information and get the fuller picture, because if you haven't figured it out already, you can't just trust what somebody tells you. No matter what network they're on, no matter what news station, no matter what their credentials and credibility they have, you always want to do your due diligence. You always want to check into this and be sure that you're doing what you're doing because of your actions, because of your plan, because of your intentions, not because of somebody else trying to drive you to do one thing or another. So in order for you to be able to make those informed decisions, for you to understand how to navigate that ship that you're charting through these uncharted waters, that's why you got to collect data. That's why you got to scan the horizon and see what's out there. That's why you've got to try to understand as much as you can. And look, if you're in real estate, if you have a real estate license, if you're a realtor, if you're a broker, you're a mortgage loan originator or anything like that, I absolutely recommend that you study this stuff, that you watch this stuff, that you look into this so you can be informed. And when you're informed, you could spread that information to your clients, to your coworkers, your colleagues, and allow them to go in and do their own in-depth analysis. But you pique their interest by being able to share that information from what you know, and now people will look to you for future advice, especially when they find out that, oh, you might know a thing or two about what's going on, about how I could benefit from understanding the market in real estate. If you're trying to tap into working with investors, this is the language you have to be able to speak. So that way you understand from that investor's perspective what they're trying to do and how they can accomplish it and how you could help them accomplish it. So look, that's what volatility is. Look, this is a little different than what we normally talk about in state of real estate, because normally we're specifically focused on real estate, but there's all kinds of craziness and news going on in the stock market with GameStop and BlackBerry and Nokia and AMC and the cryptocurrencies and all the other madness that happens, whatever the names change based on what's going on there. But that's volatility. If you watch what's going on, you can't see what's happening in these markets happen in real estate because the volatility is so different. And one of the things that's important to remember as well is that Wall Street is completely different than the real estate market. Now, they do have a lot of ties and connections together, especially when we talk about mortgages and mortgage-backed securities, and we talk about people's wages and incomes and their mortgages. And there's this is a whole rabbit hole of webs and of things connected together. And you'll probably never understand every aspect of it. And I don't say that to be condescending, because I don't think I'll ever understand every aspect of it either, because there's just so much. But the more information and knowledge it is that you can take in, the better prepared it is you could be to make the right decisions and help your clients make the right decisions. So look, that's about all the time we've got for today. If you want to learn more about growing your real estate business, check out our post-licensing course. Or if you don't have your real estate license yet, call us up and we'll get you started. We got great packages with everything you need. 813-333-2676. Again, that's 813-333-2676. All we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
State of real estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business.